line was, and you're like,
Yeah.
yes, I saw that, and I don't necessarily, like, I don't know, it was funny, but like when you start thinking and it starts adding up and adding up, and you're like,
it's funny, actually.
That's the 14th of those type of jokes, so you're like, this is ridiculous, like, sort of things.
And it's funny because I didn't, for me, it wasn't Korg, it was Hulk. The whole bit where Hulk is a toddler. Like, he's just an angry toddler. Whenever he's not in the gladiatorial arena, that's his persona.
Well, I mean, the problem is he talked a lot in this film, and,
and it was
there's no way to get around what the problem is that he has to be Hulk for X number of minutes in this film, and you're like, well, he literally couldn't just be going. Like, you can't write one-sided dialogue, especially when your other dialogue partner is Thor. Who are both like, which is like, I don't know if like the screenwriter must have been like, well, okay, so 80% of my film is made up of two characters who don't do dialogue.
My guess, honestly, is that this is building to, again, because they've said this is the second part of a Hulk trilogy. My guess is that this is building to somehow curing Banner / separating Hulk from Banner in some way. Maybe Mr. Fix-It, like the gray, intelligent Hulk who's like half as strong from the Peter David comics of the 90s, or like, it wouldn't surprise me if we saw an evolution in the Hulk, especially because doing that evolution would give Mark Ruffalo a great way to say, look, I had this great character arc. This is a really interesting thing. Now I can move on with my life, and somebody else can be Hulk.
Well, he also
Cho, who's the actual like the Korean teenager, I think, who is the Hulk right now in the comics. His mom appeared briefly in Age of Ultron, so like there's always that.
Well, I mean, he also he has to, just as a character within the film, like, he has to be able to control Hulk considerably more, and you see that a little bit more in this film. Comic to actually, though, with one exception, to great comic effect. Which is
there's again, this movie feels a little bit like a love letter to, like, it's like Waititi has been sitting there on the outside watching and enjoying Marvel films for 10 years. And now this is his love letter to, like, there's literally, like, and again, this is not really a spoiler, it's just a thing Hulk repeats the line, Hulk always angry, which was like his big badass line in the Avengers, and here it's just like Hulk is an annoying toddler, and these are things that come out of his mouth.
Well, I think the problem is that you have to make him more of a monosyllable than Thor, because Thor is basically.
But I feel like Thor is a meathead, but he's not dumb.
No, but he doesn't. You go through the entire time that he's had. I mean, like, what's his dialogue? And that's the essential thing, is that you're not making a. This couldn't be a film that was mostly quiet. So you have to have witty banter back and forth. But when you're too witty banter, is literally and then also on top of it, on Ruffalo's character, Ruffalo with Banner, he doesn't really have witty banter too much. Usually he's the either the butt of the joke, or he's the guy that says something smart. And
he's the exposition guy more than anything else.
I mean, like, you need, and it's almost like he, because there's scene he puts on some of Tony Stark's clothing, and it's almost like he's like trying to do some like weird mix or something, like the Tony Stark, where it's like, oh god, I'm trying to remember which whether it was Iron Man or whatever, where he's like really, really fucked up after something happening to him, and it was almost like that he was playing that character. But
I feel like that was in the first Avengers when he got dropped out of the plane or whatever it was, and we had the Harry Dean Stanton cameo.
Possibly,
he like wakes up in the like middle of some field of rocks, and the guy. But anyway, trying to think of what the things were that I really wanted to address, and again, like, I think we've done a pretty good job of being pretty non-spoilery, which makes it a shorter podcast because usually we get to talk more about plot points. Maybe we'll do that at some point once this movie's out on DVD or something.
Yeah. Or just on Monday or something.
Yeah. But trying to think. I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I think Tessa Thompson was great. She's a great addition. I hope that they do something interesting with her other than just like have her fight Thanos and she'll be one of the 97 characters in the next Avengers movie. I'm super. I won't lie. I'm super apprehensive of the next Avengers movie because I just don't see anybody effectively balancing that giant crowd and giving anybody anything remotely resembling actual character moments.
I mean, I think that. I mean, again, I think it just has to come in waves or something like that. Like you have your teams or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that this film even jumped around. I mean.
Yeah,
that's actually been my problem with the Avenger films in general is that they so rarely fight. Like you have that one. I'm sorry, I know so much of the public loved that the airport scene. I thought that was the lamest fucking scene. Obviously, seeing the original, seeing the comic version, seeing everything like that, but it's like the lamest fucking scene I've ever seen. It But anyway, I thought everything, of course, was terrible. But you know how I think everybody listening to this probably knows how I feel about Civil War and Age of Ultron. I actually like Civil War more than I like Age of Ultron. But those you're just gonna have to have like different waves and different fighting sequences.
I mean, there's a way to make it not a giant mess, but I don't know that there's a way to make it genuinely compelling. Like, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I could totally be wrong.
I don't know if these Avengers. The thing is that, like, I don't know if these Avengers films have to. Like, when's the last? I mean, again, like, just just us because we agree basically pretty much on the last couple Avengers films, where it's just like I don't think that they seemingly have to. I think they'll be able to throw shit at the wall, and some of it'll stick. And everybody will jerk themselves off silly about it, and then shit on Justice League.
Yeah, I think this is my favorite of the Avengers, like the actual Avengers movies, since like maybe Captain America. I know you really liked Winter Soldier. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't one of my favorites.
Winter Soldier sold for me because of politics and that sort of stuff, so you don't have to once you inject that sort of stuff into the films that I mean, like the fact that I liked the Guardians film so much speaks to I think like how just genuinely good they are, not how like fun and actiony and stuff like that they are, but just like how well written and how well edited everythally. There's not a single thing about those films that I'd be like, well, that could have been done better. It could have been done different, but done better.
And that's the thing, actually, is that I enjoyed the hell out of Thor Ragnarok, but there are a couple of things that like I look at as a viewer and I'm just like, either we didn't need that, or it could have been done better, it could have been done differently. I don't think it's a spoiler to reveal that there's a kind of extended sequence in this film that it's basically just a longer version of the post-credits stinger from Doctor Strange, where Thor goes to Doctor Strange for help finding Odin. Yeah. And I don't know, that whole thing just felt like I felt like, and I like Cumberbatch, and I actually like it was fun enough. Yeah. Like, and they handled it pretty well, but it just like
it was the same bit done like 7 times.
And it was like probably 5 minutes of movie. Yeah. And I'm just like, we could have spent a minute locating Odin in some other way. Yeah. And
I will say, I'm trying to kind of scan through my head on whether this is spoiler world. I think that the film made me dislike Odin too much. Yeah. Like, between the like back history, between the kind of like him just, I think honestly, it's because this was
again mirroring what they did in the first movie. I feel like this was them kind of trying to take it away from comic book Odin and turning it back into a little bit more of the like, oh yeah, here's the Odin of Asgardian myth and how he interfaces with the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Which is not, it's not to say, but it's like, I don't know if that's what they were going for as much, because the whole scene in Norway, right? Yeah. Norway, was just kind of weird. Like,
Yeah.
not only was the dialogue neither kind of like, I'm going to speak in kind of Jedi riddles.
Yeah.
And I'm also not going to actually tell you like
Yeah.
what you need to do and what's going on.
Yeah, and that.
So yeah.
That did. I mean, I found certain things frustrating in the movie, and again, like, the movie overwhelmingly was really enjoyable, and so by and large, I don't spend a lot of time on the things that bug me. But like, that was one of those things. I felt like earlier I talked about how a lot of the performances kind of devolved into camp a little bit, and to varying extents, it worked.
Yeah.
I thought that it really worked for Hela.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that it worked for Loki.
Yeah.
I didn't think it worked as well for Odin, because I thought that Anthony Hopkins is just an amazing naturalistic actor, and every time you see him start to go into camp, outside of Silence of the Lambs, which is its own kind of iconic thing, but whenever I see him go into camp, I start thinking of, like, first of all, the Transformers movie, and he did some other really awful.
He's done a ton of small like films that when you actually accidentally watch them and you're like, oh, this is why I haven't heard of this film actually coming out, because he's done a ton of films lately. And I say lately, like, in the last like 10 years or so.
And he does this, the thing that he did in this one, the thing where I'm an old man and I'm smiling wistfully and speaking in riddles. This is a thing that he does a lot now.
Yeah,
and
it's kind of my checked out acting. Like, I can appear in a film, and maybe it's
like,
a little Marlon Brando-esque. Like, I'm going to sit behind a table, and I'm going to talk to you.
It's his version of Harrison Ford's finger wagging. But so I was not overly impressed by not just like how they presented Odin, but also in the performance. And I agree with you. I can't tell how much of that was an intentional, like, we're doing a little bit of a character study or a riff on Odin versus how much of it is just like,
I just don't think it was used well. Like, the what happens just trying like but like what happens, like, for all the characters involved, I don't know if it was used as appropriate as effectively emotional, especially emotionally.
Yeah, like,
it was just kind of a that happened.
And that was a thing that, like, for me, that was a product of their, I won't call it poor pacing, but there was a very frenetic, frantic pace to this movie. It was paced kind of similarly to The Foreigner, actually, in the sense that, like, it's like you would spend a lot of time on a fight scene, but then there would just be a hard cut, and, like, you're like, wait, what? And one of the things that Waititi did a lot of times, and I think it's maybe because he's not super comfortable doing fight scenes, or maybe it's just a creative choice, I don't know, but there was at least 4 times in this movie where 2 people are about to, like, go at it, and there's a hard cut to a totally different scene, and you don't come back to the fight either for a long time or ever. Like, there's a beat where, like, actually the big fight that you saw in every trailer 150 times between Thor and Hulk, like, there's a beat in there where it cuts away, and, like, you just go to something else for, like, 5 minutes. And then when it cuts back to them, they're in a totally different place, and you're like, wait, what? And so
I will say when, which I completely agree. The extended fight sequences that we do have, though, are pretty good.
Oh yeah.
If not, I mean, like, a little bit frenetically, like, the choices in editing go a little bit skew, but and just shot. I mean, because they're trying to do traditional fight sequences crossed with the Immigrant Song editing trailer, like, fight sequences, which worked. I think in general,
I thought this
like,
had some of the best fights of recent Marvel movies, and part of that is because, like, take Valkyrie, for instance. Valkyrie is, like, this badass female warrior, and you could easily just be like, okay, she's Asgardian Black Widow. And that's almost kind of backed up by the flirtatious thing she has going on with Hulk. But
the thing is, though, that is... I think that the reason why, especially the main one that I think we're both thinking of, like, on the bridge, is that unlike the Avengers, where you have like just even the first Avengers film, you think about that downtown Manhattan, or Midtown actually Manhattan fight sequence. You go from Iron Man, very effective fighter, can basically take on anybody. You have Captain America, basically can take on pretty much anybody around there. And then you have Black Widow, and then you have Hawkeye up in the thing, and he runs out of arrows or whatever. And so there's like, you have the full range. And oh, by the way, you have Hulk, who's literally taking on the entire spaceship alien things, whatever the hell they were. So in this film, though, especially in most of the main fight sequences, literally everybody is fucking like at minimum Iron Man level in that fight sequence, if not above. I mean, Valkyrie is close to on par with Thor, and even the bad guys for the most part aren't like the drones from the first Avengers. At least they can and even the random citizens, by the way, take on quite a few of the zombie soldier things. But
my thing though is I also think that they did a lot less digital retouching on the fights in this movie than we've seen in a lot of the Marvel movies recently. Yeah. And you see a lot more things that are clearly like, oh, that's a stunt person, and not like, oh, that's a computer generated, and you see that in I'm going to compare Tessa Thompson kind of favorably to Scarlett Johansson, and it's not really any fault of Scarlett Johansson's. It's just the choices they make with Black Widow. It feels like it's just a gymnastics performance, and then they put people in places where they can strategically be struck by her foot. Like there's no semblance of an actual fight scene there. It's just like, wow, look at this like sexy woman doing cool crap, and all these dudes like walking into her foot.
Pretty
and
much.
Valkyrie
and also confusingly, people who like Captain America is punching in the face full force, having the same effect as her foot, like as she flips backwards, and it's like, okay, anyway.
but Valkyrie had a very similar fighting style, but I felt like everything she did, it was like watching Aikido or Jeet Kune Do instead of watching Taekwondo, because Taekwondo is like meant to be showy, it's meant to be theatrical, whereas like Aikido and Jeet Kune Do are meant to be effective, efficient, and get you out of there. And so there was an element of you look at Valkyrie and you're like, oh, that's how the women in these movies ought to be fighting. Because like, and again, without getting into like a political thing, like I do feel like there's a lot of fight scenes where the purpose of Black Widow is to look super hot while also being at least semi-useful to the team.
I mean, she also like doesn't have, she has no abilities, right? I mean, it's literally just she's really good at fighting. That's not a question. But it's not like she can pick up shit, which Valkyrie like can pick up Thor. Like, I mean, that upon itself is a thing. And so like, she has, at least the
I like the fact that you have, like with Valkyrie and Thor, you have this thing where the two of them appear to be roughly on par strength-wise, and I think that he's stronger, but she's much more capable as a fighter, and so basically you have two Thors floating around, and they're used slightly differently, which is kind of her role in the comics. She actually, if you look at Valkyrie's costume in the comics, it's literally just a distaffed Thor costume. Like, it's got the blue like circles and the yellow belt, and she wears Thor's costume. She's also, Nordic Aryan girl. So of course, casting Tessa Thompson in the role got some people all pissy, and to those people I say, you're terrible people, because Tessa Thompson is like one of the best actresses in Hollywood. Like, you watch this and you watch Creed and you're like, I don't need to see anybody else in any roles for the next 6 months.
She
can just do it.
That we don't have to have all white characters for things, guys. Sorry, just But yeah, I thought her performance and Hemsworth's performance were the two that I liked the best in terms of just like getting it across
And part of that, I think, is because both of them had the most kind of pathos and they had the most naturalistic approach.
Mm-hmm.
And in a movie that is so over the top, these characters who are very naturalistic become then very relatable.
Yeah.
And it's this kind of weird, you know.
She also, I mean, the one thing I do, she reminded me a lot of Gal Gadot and not just female character, but in the fact that they're having a shit ton of fun doing what they're doing, like when they're fighting, and then they're kind of a different character to some level beforehand. I love almost everything about her character, though I wish that there was. I guess maybe it was supposed to be, obviously, it was, you know, like she has like a switch.
Yeah.
That I don't know. It just kind of happens.
Yeah.
And it's kind of disappointing that there wasn't. I don't know. Like maybe there's just too many of those moments, because there's a lot of those. Oh, is he or isn't he going to? And then it happens. Yeah. There's literally like. I also 4 at least.
it's also a weird. I think part of it is just a function of some weird creative choices, because again, there are moments, and it's like I talked about it in terms of the fights, but there are moments in the narrative where the director cuts away.
Yeah.
And then when you come back to that character has made a game-changing choice.
Yeah. Off camera. Yeah.
Off camera.
Yeah.
And so that it's. Because of the fact that almost all of those choices were obviously going to happen, it's not very jarring, and I think the intent was to try and get the Millennium Falcon moment, like that moment where Han Solo shows back up, and you're like, yeah.
But I completely agree. Except there was too many.
Oh yeah,
no, like literally, because that whole film is building up to that moment. Literally building, and you have very little signs. You know, obviously we all know, but I mean, like I would imagine, especially with Harrison Ford at the moment, it's like not being a huge. You know, you could potentially see him not be. He could pull a Lando or something, but that there was. I can think of at least 3 moments with major characters within the film where they're all like, no, we're going to do it. And you kind of almost know that they are because of choices along the way. Like, they don't go too far. You know, the executioner not actually executing anybody. Never actually really doing anything bad.
Which is kind of a spoiler, except for the fact that literally at no point, like, there's not a point in his character where... Carl Urban isn't acting with every fiber of his being to say he doesn't want to be there.
Yeah. He just is literally trying to survive, and so he is.
But so that's the thing. Like, I really, really liked this movie. I don't think this movie is as perfect as like everybody adores it so far. It's got the highest Rotten Tomatoes rating of any Marvel movie ever. Blah 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 blah. And I'm kind of like, I don't like, and I mean. I would say, and again, like I'm hard on superhero movies most of the time. Like I don't enjoy them as much as the average consumer does, because of my relationship to superheroes and the fact that at the end of the day I still think they work best as comics. But on the scale of like recent superhero movies, and certainly on the Marvel Studios movies, if I'm going to call a movie great, I'd say this is a great superhero movie, and then, you know, that said, I can certainly see some of the flaws and some of the edges. I'm going to be super interested to see it on a smaller screen and see whether taking away some of the spectacle of it. I think it actually might enhance.
I would agree,
because this was actually a fairly small, fairly personal story for most of these characters, and the spectacle almost distracts from what's going on.
The few like super wide shots of like spectacular shit happening were kind of disappointing. Especially that last scene.
And again, I kind of feel like some of that stuff where the fight scenes, like where people are rushing at each other and then it cuts.
Yeah.
I almost feel like that's the director admitting, like, I know that what you're going to come up with in your head is better than anything I can shoot. Yeah. So I'm going to move the story along.
Yeah, it just, I think it just happened too much. Like, that was the only thing.
No,
I also am like, in a film that is small, it's like, you know, it's basically like, well, this is kind of a half of an Avengers film. And I kind of want a couple more minutes.
Yeah.
If I'm going to spend 5 minutes anywhere, I'm like, I want 5 more minutes in the ring with Hulk and Thor, like, just bashing each other. And
although I will say that, to me, like, when I could look at it compared to the Hulkbuster fight in Avengers 2, which everybody just salivated over. Like, it was like the thing that they marketed the movie around. I thought this was so much better. Like, just not even remotely close. This was so much better than the Hulkbuster fight. And part of that is that I was not super impressed by the Hulkbuster fight. But I didn't think it was terrible. It was just kind of there.
I in general don't like the. I'm happy that they've kind of like relatively, maybe they'll probably, I'm sure with the next one they'll change it. But I like the fact that they just went back to the one suit, because I hate the bit of I've got a suit for everything and I don't actually need to be, and it was just too much. I'm like, I don't mind the gadgets and things like that, the enhancements, but I also, like, to me, end of the day, the superhero or the whatever is the human or the person. Yeah. And so but the one thing, not the one thing. I mean, it's like, how many times do we say the one thing? But I should rename the podcast the one thing. But I really, really hope that this is the big move for the entire Marvel universe. Not only does it, I think, set up it gives through the next couple films, but it also gives a nice move towards what happens after. After, you know,
one thing that I'm concerned about is that, you know, we got an Iron Man trilogy and nothing else. And if they're gonna give us a Hulk or a Thor trilogy, then the ending of this movie, it would be satisfying if Hulk or if Thor wasn't going to show up again in 10 minutes in an Avengers film. Knowing that Thor's story does not end here, and we can't give him the kind of, okay, well, what's next is what's next. You know what I mean? Knowing that his story is going to be defined, this ending is not particularly satisfying as the end, capital E end, of the story.
I mean, I think it works because the Thor Odin story, the storyline that they've been whatever kind of telling in the last two,
the dynamic between Odin and his two sons,
and even in the other films where he appears, and then and well, his home, you know, it has its arc. I mean, obviously we have to figure out what happens next. I can't say anything more. But I feel like that is complete. It's a very weird, because obviously Thor had become basically a tool in some way, and obviously this film is very much a passing the time. Maybe not passing the time, but like we have to go pick him up, basically. Like this basically is a traveling film to be like, oh, Thor has to go pick up Bannon, and then come back, so that the next films can kind of happen. Oh, and by the way, pick up some new people, and you know, whatever. So, but like I said, I
want to see Bannon fight Thanos.
Just Bannon. Science. Just yell science at him.
No, that's Banner. I was saying.
Oh, Banner, not Bannon. Yeah, shit.
I want to see Steve Bannon just get obliterated by the Infinity Gauntlet. That's a whole other thing.
Oh, that's the only fucking character I like. But I would put it on a
Steve Bannon. That was
what? Oh, Steve.
It's Bruce Banner.
Yes. Oh, what the fuck was I thinking of? Oh, fucking hell. Anyway,
sorry.
That would be hilarious. But sorry, now I just had that picture in my head. But actually, for some reason, I'd rather just see Hulk go no, or do like he did with Loki, just poof, on the stage at CPAC next year. Just drop in, be like, no, puny god. But like it's, I mean, it's no Guardians of the Galaxy, but within the world of the Marvel films, I think it's certainly,
it's kind of the next best thing.
I mean, I got two Cap film. I got my two Guardians. I got my two Cap film, like the first two Cap films, and then maybe this, then probably this.
Yeah, it's definitely my top 5.
Because, but honestly, like I view Guardians and like it's not part of the Avengers world. Yeah. So like, there's the Avengers films. I mean, like this is to me is more fun and better than the first Avengers film, which is I think the best of that world. And then in the world. The first, I have to rewatch the first Iron Man film. Obviously, it is pained by, or it's kind of hurt a little bit by the fact that it wasn't that long ago, but it was long enough that you can't just have these ridiculous CG scenes, and obviously, I don't even know what the budget was, but you know, it didn't have the world, it didn't have the universe. I won't say the used universe. I'll just see the what do they call it? Certified. What do they call when it's a used certified car?
Marvel
New certified or something like that. I'm thinking of a used car. Anyway.
So, anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
I don't think so, no.
All right, I mean, Thor the Dark World, or I did it again. Thor Ragnarok. Go see it. It's definitely worth your time. Yeah. Weirdly, and you talked about how the director, you thought the director had said don't bother to see it in IMAX or in 3D because...
Oh, he just said 3D.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure they said don't see it in 3D.
I wouldn't drop the extra money. I mean, maybe there's a couple places like during the big gladiator fight where it would be really cool in 3D.
I mean, if you really love 3D, then
exactly.
Then go see it in 3D.
Like, it wasn't shot in 3D. It was up converted. And to me, I tend to think anything that was up converted, it's not worth paying the extra money.
Yeah.
But, so thanks for listening. Like, share, and subscribe this podcast. You should write a review. Tell us that we're horrible people because we don't like Civil War. We like those reviews.
Yep.
And then check back with us very soon because there's like a million other things we want to do.
Yep.